Bat Force Radio.
Bat Force Radio is rated M for mature, or should that be immature?
Guys, Dustin Wynn.
Hey, this is Scott Snyder.
This is Paul Dini.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
You're listening to Bat Force Radio.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman, and you're listening to Bat Force Radio, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to Bat Force Radio. We have been on something of a hiatus here for a while, but we are back at it. So, apologies to all 9 of you who are going to be listening to this, but we are back now. And kicking things off big with something I've wanted to do for a long time. If you were going to talk about the Mount Rushmore of comic book creators of at least the 2000s, this guy is definitely in there. And really, you might have to say of all time. Our guest today has been responsible for so many of my own favorite comics over the course of more than a decade, picking up numerous awards along the way. You know him for work on Injustice, Gods Among Us, DCeased, All New Wolverine, Neverlanders, The Deep, a whole bunch of Star Wars, Dark Knights of Steel, Superman, Son of Kal-El, and in my opinion, the best Nightwing run of all time with Bruno Redondo. Now he has just completed his first story arc on a new and continuing Detective Comics run with Mikel Janin. Welcome, Tom Taylor. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. I appreciate it very much. Now, first of all, I've been pestering you to do this since at least 2017. So first off, I'm sorry and thank you.
No, thank you for hassling me. I'm notoriously terrible at tying down to things. So yeah, I just have a general fear and oh no, I have to be awake in the morning or something for something, and then I'm all out. But yeah, then I look at my deadlines and go, oh no, I don't have time to stop and talk. I have to type. So I'm glad we can make this happen.
Yeah, well, you're always working on things that are so big. I understand you not wanting to take time away from your work, and just so people realize, it's morning here for me, so my camera's not on. It's the middle of the night for you, so your camera's not on. People are just gonna have to deal with that.
I just want you to know that I did shower just before this. I even trimmed my beard, just in case we're on camera. I went to effort. It's 5 to midnight, but I look presentable. I just want to say.
I want you to know. I want you to know that I have not showered, and I haven't trimmed my beard today at all. So yeah, you're in way better shape than me. Yeah. Now. You've done so many things creatively, writing and performing in plays, winning awards on that front as well, just completely outside of the comic world. What was your own origin story in comics? What drew you in, and how did you find your way to working in this medium?
Right. Okay, so we go all the way back. So I have always been a comics fan, my entire life. I was raised by a single mom, very poor, and loved comics, but didn't really have access to them in Australia. So whenever there was one, or and couldn't afford them either, but whenever there was one anywhere, I would devour it, whether that was Asterix or 2000 AD or DC Comics, little 10-cent jobs you could find at secondhand record stores when I was a kid. Any chance I got, I'd get them. And I sort of made a promise to myself when I was a kid, because we couldn't afford comics. So I promised myself that I would buy myself comics when I was an adult. I promised Kid Tom that would be the case, and obviously I've taken that a little bit further. But yeah, I was in school. I dropped out in about year 11. I became a childcare worker. I became a professional juggler and fire eater. I used to juggle knives on the streets for over my wife, who I'm still married to. But along the way, I was always coming through theatre. So I was in youth theatre. I was writing musicals at a very young age, and I ended up winning a lot of awards, particularly for short plays. So I won the biggest short play competition in the world with a play called The Example, which was about a briefcase on a train station written in the wake of the London bombing. And I went online looking for people. After I had a few hits sort of in theatre, I went online looking just for an artist to help me adapt some of these plays into comics. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the internet, but I was destroyed by stepping into this space. Just, how dare you think you're so cool, Mr. Multi-award-winning playwright, coming in here into our space and blah, 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 and stars burn out very brightly here, rah, 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 Taylor. Anyway, but then one guy basically typed, "Leave him alone, guys. Do you want to get a coffee?" And that man was Colin Wilson. And Colin Wilson is a minor deity in the comics world, particularly in France. He was one of the first guys on Rogue Trooper with Dave Gibbons, who's a very good mate of his. And he was handpicked by Moebius to take over Blueberry. He is incredible. And
a New Zealand guy, right?
A New Zealand guy, yeah, you know him. He's great. And he just happened to live 10 minutes from my house at the time. I had sort of a 3-month-old baby, and here he was, and we had a coffee, and slowly, I mean, he told me there was no possible way he could do the art on this comic, but it was a great story and he really liked it. And then he showed me, like, a couple of weeks later, some character sketches appeared. And I'm like, he's like, this is what it sort of looked like, but I don't have time to draw it, of course. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. And then a page appeared. He's like, now I don't have time to draw it, but here's the first page. And it was only 11 pages. And then a second page appeared. And it was incredible, and I could just feel it.
Damn.
And I remember waking my wife at 1 a.m. We had a very small baby, mortgage. We had we were so poor at the time. And I remember waking her, and I was just starting to get into writing for television. I was actually doing well there and presenting TV. And I said, "I'm really sorry. I think I'm going to be a comic book writer." And she woke up and went, "Oh, okay," and rolled back and went to sleep. And over that time, sort of all the way up to page 9 of 11, Colin was saying, "Here's the next page, but I don't have time to finish it." And slowly it got finished, and this one comic sort of became my calling card that Colin had drawn. And that comic about a briefcase on a train station got me a job writing Star Wars at Dark Horse. And I never looked back. I quit my job when I got my first 6-issue contract.
Man, that's nuts. Yeah. To have your first step in be like, because he is of a generation before our time in comics. So to have someone who already had such a resume, that's incredible.
It was incredible. And he was the guy who then did Star Wars with me. And I actually, I reached out to Dark Horse at his behest. He said, "Yeah, reach out here just in case." And Colin actually didn't have work at the time, or didn't have a gig. So suddenly I've got a gig for both of us. He's like, "You did what?" And it worked out really well. We spent, 3 years on Star Wars Invasion. Then I met a guy called Bruno Redondo when we did Darth Maul Death Sentence. And then I hassled DC to let him on Injustice. And the rest is history.
I want to take a minute to talk about our love for Bruno here. He's been on the show with us before, and I've loved his work for so long on so many things. The Injustice with you, you guys did that Suicide Squad, and then you both changed the world of comics with that Nightwing run. It couldn't have come out, I think, at a better time in the world. It was just such a positive and hopeful book. You've got this story of Dick Grayson going back home to Bloodhaven and just setting about making it a better place. And that was a perfect time in the world for a story like that, I think.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, look, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about this more, but I think one of the reasons it resonated with so many people is just what a positive portrayal of masculinity that book shows. That Dick Grayson in particular, he is just this incredibly caring, generous, lovable, strong, kind person who just wants to help. That is the heart of this. It's the heart of all of this. And I think a lot of people wanted to see that in their comics and in their entertainment at that time.
Yeah. And now this is something that I've wondered about. We just talked about how you're from Australia. Your first work was with an artist from New Zealand. Now, maybe over the years, you've just sort of perfected the art of writing in these characters' voices, but has there been a part of the process where you would hand in a script to your editors, whatever, and had at any point along the way your editors saying, "Hey, this isn't really the way Dick Grayson would say this because he's American? Like, has there been like a regional dialect issue where they've had to say, oh, an American character wouldn't really say that?
Not a lot. You'd be surprised. I mean, the thing is, I grew up reading American comics and watching American television and watching American films. The industry here in Australia is quite small. Like I'm a co-creator of a TV show, which is a co-pro between Canada and Australia, which has French and American influence and stuff as well. So, I've always sort of written with an ear for that. But you do find really strange things, like the fact that America doesn't have the word whinge or whinger. Like, whinger is a phenomenal word that you guys need. Like, it's important. Like whinge is a combination of, it's kind of like wine, but it's giving you more crap than that. And it bugs me that you don't have the word whinge.
I'm in Canada, and I think
you get it. Okay.
We're exposed a lot more to British stuff and things like that. In particular, like my grandparents are from England, so I always grew up exposed to a lot more of that stuff and gravitating toward more European, TV and films than I think, particularly a lot of Americans in general would.
Yeah, absolutely. And we grew up with so much British television and BBC and the rest of it as well here in Australia. So yeah, we get a lot of that, and actually Canadian stuff as well. Lots of stuff. We grew up with you can't do that on television, and yes, Degrassi Junior High, and
Degrassi. Did you guys have the Littlest Hobo?
We did, yeah.
Yeah. That was a classic one. Like first TV appearances for like Mike Myers. Donald Sutherland was in that. Yeah, crazy. But nobody knows it. It's okay for American audiences who don't know. It was the story of basically a stray dog who roamed town to town through Canada, helping people out of situations miraculously. And that was what it was.
If Nightwing was a dog.
Yeah, exactly. Bitewing, but with 4 legs. And on the topic of Bitewing, over the course of your Nightwing run, which was a great affirmation of Dick Grayson as an A-list main character in the DC universe, as opposed to his origins as a sidekick, we really saw that affirmation reflected across the continuity, with Nightwing taking a leadership role in crossover events like Dark Crisis, and with the Titans taking over the role of the Justice League as the group really charged with protecting the world in the absence of a Justice League. So that left me with some questions of that time of what was happening in the comics. Like, one, were you aware going into your time with Nightwing that this shift to him being a marquee character was going to happen, or was that just developing as you were going, like maybe as a result of how well your run was going? And in either case, did that influence the kind of story that you were creating for him, knowing what a central role he was beginning to take in the main DC universe?
Yes, it influenced things later, but I have to say, and you'll see this, the omnibus is about to come out, and we actually print in there the first email that I got asking me whether I wanted to write Nightwing. At the time, I had a few different offers. We were coming off of, obviously, the first DCeased. There were some big sort of hits, and I had a lot of emails from a lot of editors asking me if I was interested in X, and some of them would be seen, I guess, at the time as more high profile than Nightwing. But for me, as soon as I saw Nightwing, there was nothing else to see. And in my very first email, I literally said, I want to put Nightwing back on the pedestal I know he belongs on. I want to show the world why he's an A-lister. And it's literally all in that first email. I said what we wanted to do. And the fact that as this book grew and grew and grew, and people, seem to love it. And of course, you've got Bruno Redondo, who's just incredible, and Adriano Lucas and Wes Abbott, and we have this amazing team, and Jessica Chen and Jess Burbank, and a team of people who love the character and wanted to tell great stories. And we loved the character, and we knew why we loved him, and we wanted the rest of the world to go, this is why he should be up there with Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman. Like this is he's been around since 1939. Although Marv Wolfman was telling me just a little while ago that Dick Grayson has now been Nightwing longer than he was Robin, which is a big thing. Yeah. But yeah, no, certainly positioning him as an A-lister and having him lead like that was great. And then you had so many people who wanted to jump in on that. Like you had Josh Williamson leading Dark Crisis and having Nightwing take over there. And then obviously we had things like Beast World and other big events at DC which Nightwing led. And then Mark Waid the same when he came in. It was just like, everybody loves Dick Grayson. They love this guy and they want to see him in this position.
Yeah, that moment in Dark Crisis where Nightwing is really taking charge, like everyone's there in the room, so to speak, and he's the one that's directing everyone. He's saying, "You guys go do this. You guys go do that." And there's that shot of Batman just looking proudly at him taking charge. But all of that I don't think can happen without the groundwork for him being at that level. That came from the work that you, Bruno, and the team were doing. And because you mentioned her, I wanted to touch also on Jessica Chen. What a loss for comics that she has stepped away as an editor in comics and is doing other things now. But fantastic. But
no, 100%. She was such a fantastic cheerleader and great ideas, and just she was that one that if I had a bizarre idea or something I really wanted to do that we knew we might get some pushback from somewhere, she was the one leading it, jumping into the fray. She obviously, I was a professional juggler for years and I was a circus person, but so was she. She on the day of our first issue coming out, she hung silks from what I think you call them silks in America, tissue, or Canada, and she hung silks from somewhere in her street and hung from them while reading our first issue and stuck a photo of it. And we're like, yep, you're one of us. And then, the three of us, her, me, and Bruno, we went to Madrid together and we talked about this stuff. And we saw that issue 87, I think it was, with the one with no panels, the continuous issue. We saw that on this massive thing in front of us, stretching across a convention. And we just knew we had a hit. And, it was great.
Now, this is just a memory that was coming to mind as you were talking about that. I started thinking about, I think it was toward the end of the run, or maybe it was when Jessica was stepping away, that you and Bruno were both resharing that photo of the three of you like at a bar in Madrid where you were
Madrid at 3 a.m.
Just brainstorming the beginning of that. But it reminded me, I believe it was the Nightwing annual issue where it was really a relationship examination issue between Dick and Bruce. That one where they kind of had like a heart-to-heart and were really acknowledging to each other, which rarely happens, that they are father and son. And
was that at the Alfred gravesite one? Is that what you're talking about?
That might have been it. I'm trying to remember where they were. It was a while back now, but I remember at the week that issue came out. So I work in a comic shop here, and the week that issue came out, I was pulling aside people who weren't already reading Nightwing. A lot of people don't necessarily read superhero comics. They just stick to the non-superhero stuff. But I was plucking customers that, like, hold up. Come over here for a minute. Like, I was making them come stand behind the counter. Like, stand here, read this comic. And I would make them just stand there and read it. And they would get to the end. And then I would look at them when they got to the end and they would be tearing up and going, oh, wow. Okay. I'm going to have to read the rest of this. So that was
well
good
done. Thank you for your service. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for giving us that stuff to put into people's hands. That's the best part of working in a comic shop, is taking the comics you love and forcing them upon other people.
Absolutely. I did it for years before I was a comic book writer. No one would leave my house without my favorite single issue or a trade or whatever. And I lost so many comics so early in life, but they were gone to good places where people appreciated them.
There you go. Another thing. So this is kind of the second question that I had, thinking about the impact that Nightwing run had. did you ever think that you would be writing a Nightwing story where you had to deal with Alfred having already been deceased? And that turned out to be a great piece of the story, and like the backbone of Dick's story throughout your run was showing everything that he could be to Bloodhaven, utilizing this inheritance that Alfred had left him. Was that sort of intended to be the other side of the coin compared to how Bruce handles things in Gotham? Like, not that Bruce has never used his wealth to help Gotham, but he has never used it so proactively as Nightwing did in your run. Like, Nightwing, his crime fighting persona sort of became the secondary to him helping the city by, building infrastructure for people who needed help.
Yeah, look, it was I think, there's a big difference. Obviously, a Batman story kind of can't be that. Like, everybody's always saying, why doesn't he do more with his wealth? But there's a million stories where he does exactly that with his wealth.
Yeah.
There just are. I mean, we kind of did it with the end of Mercy of Dear Father just recently.
Yep.
But I think the difference is one's generational wealth, one's inherited, one's, born to wealth, and one is a kid who just wants to help, who's never had any money, who suddenly comes into enough to change things and to help people with it. And it was a really big part of the story. And I spoke to one guy in particular who was just phenomenal, who was setting up exactly this. He was setting up big community spaces to help everybody, and told me all about what you need for infrastructure, how it has to be therapy alongside free public transport, how, basic minimum income, all of these things just was such a big part of it. And I made sure to reflect everything I was told in this story, like simplified, of course, because no one wants you to talk about that in the middle of punching KGBs in the face, like you put a simplified version of it. But it was important that this is literally what a lot of great people are doing in communities around the world, and they're traveling around the world and they're getting ideas and they're talking about how do we make this better? How do we go into these areas of low socioeconomic issues and help and change things? And these are people who are, and I took what they told me, and somebody put a wonderful thing together with a bunch of academics and people who really work in this field, and said, here. And so we did, we made it work. And he gave me the name Haven. So thank you, Sean, if you're listening.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And that's very cool that a part of the creative process of a comic book story can come from something so real like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, comics are, superheroes aren't real, but I always like to ground stuff in reality. I have a wonderful friend she's a dual rocket scientist, an actual rocket scientist, and has a PhD or a master's in business management as well. And she's the CEO of a very successful company. And she's the one I go to. I'm like, so if Gambit blows up a nuclear powered thing above an island, what's the fallout? It's great. It's really useful.
The conversations that come from writing comics.
Yeah, I have a wonderful brain trust.
Well, to sort of stay on that topic of your creative process, like, what is the genesis of beginning your current run on Detective Comics? Did you have stories in mind already you wanted to tell? And how much of what you create is informed by what preceded your run? Is there thought given to purposely making a different kind of story than what was before, like in this case, Ram V's run on Detective? Are you trying to do something with a different flavor from that? Are you looking at what's going on overall in the DC universe?
I think, look, the reality is I couldn't do a Ram V story. Ram has a really unique voice, an incredible storyteller. He does these beautiful twisted tales with wonderful meanings and layers. And look, I'm a big Ram fan. I like the man.
Yeah,
I like
me too.
He's a great guy. But no, I can only tell the story that I can tell. And I have had sort of Batman stories prepared in the past, and I did have a few folders with. But for taking on a book like Detective Comics, a flagship book, this is what the company's named after. This is DC.
Yeah.
I actually asked for some time off. And when I say time off, like 2 weeks off, 2 weeks to just go and brainstorm, which is very unusual for someone like me. And I just, I have a giant whiteboard in one of my studies and a smaller one downstairs in my little brick office that I'm currently in out the back of my garage, which is like my punishment room for writing. It's tiny. And it's, and I have another whiteboard down here, and I just filled them with thoughts and ideas and looking for one story that would resonate, a story that hadn't been told before. And that's how I found that Joe Chill story, that little twist in the tale that doesn't change anything fundamentally, but just is another way to examine Batman and his values and his ethics and who he is.
Yeah, so for better or worse, there were some minorly alarmist headlines just ahead of your first detective issue. Yeah, people, crying wolf that you were. Tom Taylor was changing the history of Batman and whatever else they were, and that wasn't happening at all. You had simply located this section of the story of Bruce's parents and Joe Chill that had been largely left blank all these years, as far as anything in main continuity goes. Through that this first Detective Comics story, which has just ended in issue 1096, we learned new information about Joe Chill and the family that he had, a brief history of Thomas Wayne having saved Joe Chill's life in a hospital, which was, his job. He was this surgeon who saved lives. And not only did it not change any Batman lore, but furthermore, we saw how Thomas's motivations in rescuing, saving Joe Chill's life, and the lessons that he taught to Bruce really strengthened Bruce's own convictions to following his path as he came to understand all of that history, and understanding that we saw Bruce coming to the realization that my father still would have done the right thing even if he had known what it was going to mean for him. And so with everything that you built there, maybe you wouldn't mind telling us about this story and like some of the major players that you introduced in this story with Asima and Scarlet and this organization known as Elixir.
Yeah, look, it was one of those things. It was that moment when I found, what if, it's that classic, it's almost an Elseworlds idea, but the difference between Elseworlds and main continuity is you can't break the toys. So finding that moment of what if Thomas Wayne had saved Joe Chill's life before they ever saw each other effectively was the entry point for this, and what that means. And what it means is exactly what you just said. It's that it doesn't change anything, that the conviction is still there, that Batman is still Batman, that even though somebody else in Joe Chill's life, a woman that he abused who grew up hating young offenders, particularly men, and wanting to stop them from hurting anyone, just like Batman does, but in a vastly different way, with more violence and more death. It's that Batman, even in those moments, even though she would expect that he would want to kill this man, that if she presents him with this opportunity, he would take it, that he doesn't. And it's not just because of Thomas Wayne, it's also because of Martha. It's because of Martha's compassion and because of all the people she looked after. And it's also because of Bruce. That's who he is. Leslie tells him that at one point in one of the issues in the run. She just says, you don't do this because of the man your father was. You do this because of the man you are. And it's true. Bruce, he's built by all of these blocks. There's all these influences on his life, but he's his own person.
And what we see his own person learning about and beginning to grapple with through this first story arc is the presence, the existence of this organization known as Elixir, which was really behind this drug that was Bruce allowed to be tested on himself, sort of in his dedication to figuring out what was going on here, went along with being a test subject for this very expensive, very experimental sort of treatment, I guess you would call it. And it also served another purpose of, we've seen in the comics, particularly in the beginning of this story, how Bruce is feeling some of the effects of the years that he has been doing this stuff. But this treatment has worked to reverse some of those aging effects on him. So that's just one cool little tool that we get to see. Oh, he's going to be a little bit more invigorated right now. But there was the whole flip side of that, which is, I guess, what he suspected, is that there was some no good going on at the heart of where this was coming from. So we saw everything with what they were doing to the prisoners at this juvenile detention center, all these young troubled kids. Many of them, shouldn't even have been locked up for the things they were, which is strikingly similar to some things that we're hearing about in the real world right now.
Yeah.
But we had those that cool issue where Damien posed as a young offender and got put into the prison. And his job was, his instructions were explicitly to, stick to the plan, stay out of the way, don't get into trouble, just play your character. And he promptly did not do that. He did what a son of Bruce Wayne would do.
Yeah, I think he was able to keep his head down for about 45 minutes until the guy tried to hit a child, and then Damien took over. Yep.
Yeah, we need maybe some more of that happening in the real world. But so by the time things play out at the end of issue 1096, which for any of you who are the type to wait for collected editions, if you're watching the video version, here's the cover right now for Mercy of the Father. It's coming out in both hardcover and paperback on July 1st if you wait for collected editions, and then you're getting spoilers for this, so shame on you for waiting. But by the end of this story, Bruce has sorted out everything that's going on here, has at least put a stop to the aspect of this that was going on in Gotham. But we really see that this is just, it feels like the beginning of him sort of having to go after this large group. And is that what we should expect to see in issue 1097?
Yeah. The upshot is yes. Yeah, man, sorry, I was just staring at the Mikel's art as you're flicking it up.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's ridiculous. I'm a very lucky person. Yeah, 1097 is definitely dealing with Elixir. We've got Lee Garbutt joining us on art.
I love Lee.
Yeah, and the next issue is a big Harvey Bullock thing. Some stuff we set up with him in this run as well. He comes back, which is going to be, we're having a lot of fun. And then we have something. I mean, we have a very big number coming up in 1100, so we have something really exciting planned there, Mikel and I, and then 1101 onwards, we have an all new big thing beginning, which Mikel and I are just ridiculously excited for, and I can't wait to start talking about it.
Oh, that's exciting! And
I wish I could now. But
yeah. Me too. I would love that, but I won't press just yet. But speaking of that, you recently renewed your exclusive contract with DC.
Yes.
So we know we're getting more Dark Knights of Steel, and it was revealed that there were some other projects you're going to be working on. What is anything else announced that I'm missing? Or
nothing else is announced yet. So okay. Detective, we have plans for quite a long run on Tech.
Nice.
I'll be there for as long as they'll have me. Basically, it's a real honor to be the writer of this book. Dark Knights of Steel 2 is currently underway. I've written a few issues. We have art in for the first issue entirely, and we're on issue 2 now. And I assume we'll get we'll get an announcement soon about all of that. And then I have 2 other books that I can't discuss yet. We've dropped a few hints as to possibly who I'm collaborating with, but yeah, I would expect announcements probably in the next month or 2.
Cool. And for anyone who has not delved into Dark Knights of Steel yet, I will be honest, when it was first announced, my first thought was, is this going to be like, I thought of the Elseworlds book, I think from the 90s, the Justice League of the Round Table. And is this going to be like that?
I've never read that. That's incredible.
Oh, yeah. You have to check
that's
that
unusual of me. Yeah.
But, because you were writing it, there was no way I wasn't going to check it out. And, I remember posting about this on social media after I got to read the first issue early. And I came clean about my doubts of it. And that, I, as expected, because it was something Tom Taylor was doing, I was proven wrong. And it was not, what I worried could turn into like, a cheesy kind of 90s thing. If anything, it was sort of taking the DC universe and hitting it with a healthy dose of Game of Thrones. And, it was taking that sort of like a dark, sort of mature kind of fantasy as opposed to anything cheesy or anything like that. And it went so well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I've sort of spoken about this, but DCeased was a huge hit, and everyone just thought Tom Taylor must be a massive horror fan and loves zombies, and I'm not. I'm not a horror fan. I barely watch any of it. I don't enjoy it. When I was first offered, asked if I wanted to write a horror book for DC, I said no. I said, I don't really have time, sorry. But then I kept coming up with more and more ideas and more ways to torture heroes we love so much, and kept sending them to Ben Abernathy, and we were cackling over email, and then all of a sudden I'd written it, and I loved it. But what I am is a fantasy fan. So I grew up reading fantasy books, playing books like Fighting Fantasy, like solo role playing, and devouring fantasy books and superheroes. So the idea of being able to mash these 2 things I love together was ridiculously exciting. And it is that is my knowledge base. This is what I love. So getting to put that together and coming up with that first idea, which is, for anyone who hasn't read it, we start with Krypton. We start with the explosion of Krypton. We see Lara and Jor-El. It's everything this is the only way to save him. The rocket blasts off, Krypton explodes, the rocket crash lands. It opens up, and Lara is giving birth to Kal-El, and Jor-El is with her. And then a whole lot of people, knights on horseback, show up with bows and arrows, and they fire arrows at these things that have fallen from the sky. And Jor-El incinerates them with his heat vision, and we pull back, and there's castles and stuff. And it's one of my favorite openings I've ever written in anything. And we were just off, along with this great John Constantine prophecy. And, we can't really tell you Batman's role in this if you haven't read it, but I'd definitely read it because Batman has a very big role in this book.
Yeah, and really, that was, I think, my favorite thing about how that story played out was the really cool ways you found to fit characters that everyone knows into archetypes within fantasy, the fantasy genre. And, I won't spoil, similarly, I won't spoil where some of these characters fit in, but that was a really cool way that everyone kind of feel like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense that's what that character is. Oh, of course he's that. And yeah, it all just played really well.
Yeah. And, I mean, they work. So many of these work. I mean, having Amazons works, having, a Batman who's, I can tell you at the start, he's a Witcher. Somebody who's protects a kingdom from magic. And then things like Black Canary as a banshee. That was actually my son, who was quite young at the time, came up with it. He's like, you should make her a banshee. I'm like, genius. Nice one, you. But yeah, having Green Arrow, of course, an archer works well there. All the rest of it.
Now, you mentioned this coming from your background as a fantasy fan. What is your flavor of fantasy? Like, are you is it Tolkien? Is it Game of Thrones? What is your
it's more
lane?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up reading Tolkien. Like, I'd read The Hobbit a bunch of times. I think I read Lord of the Rings when I was 9 years old. I read Robert Hobb and Raymond D. Feist, and I read every fantasy book I could get my hands on. I'm very good friends with two big fantasy authors, both New York Times bestsellers. And we sit in a cafe once a week, the three of us, and we just put our headphones in. We, shoot the breeze for a while, and then we put headphones in and we write our own stuff. And every so often we stick our hand up and help each other out if we get stuck somewhere or want an idea and go back to work. And that's Jay Christoph and C.S. Pacat, who joined me in this universe for a little bit. But no, I've been a fantasy fan all my life. I love swords and sorcery. I love big heroic characters and those sort of classic boys' own stories. Books like Magician and Darkness at Sethanon and Mistress of the Empire, and especially I can't not say this, but Terry Pratchett, man. I've read every single Discworld book. I love them. I love his values. I love the heart he has in characters and the respect he has for everybody in his books. He's greatly missed, but his books are there forever.
Yeah, and we'll still get for those who watched it, we'll still get a little bit more of Good Omens, the TV adaptation of that. So we've got some more of that to look forward to.
Yeah,
but
left. Yep. Yeah.
Yep. You mentioned not being a horror guy, and I feel like maybe that is why DCeased was as refreshing and great as it was. But everyone loved DCeased. Obviously, it was such a huge seller. And I think that maybe because you're not a horror guy, maybe that's why you avoided falling into the things that people expected. I'm sure if you told anyone what the basic story of DCeased was, they would make the natural assumption, okay, sure, this zombie-like virus will start spreading across the earth. Okay, I know what's going to happen. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, etc. are going to save the day. But that's not what happens at all. You take it a completely, it's the opposite way. Issue 1, the characters that you expect to be the ones ending this plague and saving the day, they're the first ones dying.
Yeah. And I think killing Batman at the end of the first issue really told the world what we're going to do. I think everybody expects Batman to save the day. We're like, well, expectations. Sorry about those. And sorry to all Nightwing fans as well, who I also killed in issue 1. I love that people just decided at that point in time that I hated Nightwing. I'm like, oh, you poor things. You wait. Oh, let me write 2 omnibuses worth of love letter to this guy. But yeah, it's DCeased for me. I guess because I'm not a horror guy, I didn't want to just have violence and gore for violence and gore's sake. This was a character book for me that had to have at the heart of it hope and friendship and love. Yes, that gets torn apart a lot, but the characters and the friendships and it was how it affected them. It was a story about what would the heroes do when the world ends. How would they go on being heroes? And that's how we got 5 volumes of it.
Yeah. And this is really rare. Every volume was fantastic, and they were all fantastic in different ways. That the Unkillables arc, that focused on taking what are typically seen as villains, or some of them villains, some of them anti-heroes, and putting them in this position where they are putting their own lives on the line to protect this orphanage full of children. And just the moments that came in that, and it really, I could say it about pretty well everything that you have worked on over the years, is that you put these kinds of emotional moments that you just don't get in every writer's work. Like I think about things like the Injustice books. It was a little later in the series, there was that point where Superman's side had developed that pill to create super soldiers to further police the world, and knowing that they needed to kind of level the playing field, Batman gets a hold of one of those and begins analyzing it in the Batcave to recreate more of them to power his own side to fight back and try to free the world. And you have that moment where it's the computer is almost done analyzing that pill, and as Bruce expected, he hears Superman arrive and is pretty quickly breaking his way into the cave. So he's stalling for time. Once Superman gets in, he's doing his best he can to hide in the shadows from Superman, but it's just to buy some time for the analyzing to finish. And as Superman finally gets his hands on Bruce and just starts crippling him, you have out of panel, or in the background maybe, Alfred grabs that pill once the computer finishes, and he takes that super soldier pill. And I probably don't go a month without thinking of this issue and this moment in this issue where we've got Alfred with this super strength now, grabs Superman by his collar, says, "Stop hurting the people I love," and just smashes his forehead into Superman's face. And I don't know why. I just can't stop thinking it's that emotional. And just Alfred saying, "Stop hurting people I love."
It's a cathartic moment. The headbutting of the head butler. It was. Yeah, I also just before that he kicks him in the face and his shoe explodes. I always thought that was a cool moment. Anyway, look, it was a great moment, and I think it's pretty clear and has been clear from throughout everything I write just how much I love Alfred Pennyworth and how much I respect him. And you've seen that in DCeased, you've seen that here, you've seen that in Nightwing with the legacy as one of Dick Grayson's three fathers. I love the guy, and I have Superman at one stage in Nightwing talk about how important Alfred was and how much he respected and looked up to him, and how many times Alfred, was responsible for saving the world. This regular guy, you give him a super pill, and that's what he does. He stands up for the people he loves.
And I think you really know that a writer's work is affecting people when you see a guy who's writing superhero comics being interviewed by Anderson Cooper to talk about his Superman book. What is that like, being interviewed? I don't know if he's, if you really know who he is over in your part of the world, but in North America, he's pretty well known. What was that like for you in that moment?
Look, it was, that whole period was a bizarre time because I didn't set out to become the face of that. I was going to tell a story which I was really committed to telling and presenting, Superman, a bisexual Superman, having John Kent come out and kiss a boy, and and beyond that, it was just like, okay, it's time. It's really important that this symbol that represents all these things can also represent this for so many people, and everybody needs heroes, and everybody deserves to see themselves in their heroes. And so it was quite the phenomenon. Like, I had a feeling it was going to be big, but once it was on Saturday Night Live and I'm hearing the entire world talk about it, it became global news, and you got the vitriol plus the praise plus the everything, but it was a lot, and talking to Anderson Cooper, and I was on CNN some other time and BBC and all the rest of it. It was a lot, and particularly the Anderson Cooper one, because I hadn't slept the entire night before. I'd been up all night, and my son was like, "Oh, Dad, you look terrible." I'm like, "I know." I was writing and trying to, deal with crazy emails coming in, and anyway. But I think we did okay. Still managed to pretended to be awake. Yeah.
I do want to point out how far you are falling today, going from speaking with Anderson Cooper to speaking with me here. I appreciate you taking that one on the chin.
No, not at all. And look, there were a lot of people who wanted to talk to me at the time that I just said no to, because there were a lot of people, and we're talking household names, who wanted to talk to me about the negativity of it, or the hate that I'd received, and I had no interest in that, and I made that really clear. Because the positivity, what came from that was so important. The people that we were contacted by, I had DMs from all over the world, from people who came out that day, who saw the news and came out to their family, who couldn't quite, but wanted to let me know that I've made their lives a bit better that day. Maybe they were living in a country where it was illegal to come out, where they felt threatened, but they wanted to let me know. And there were people, we're not just talking teenagers, there were people who came out that day or that week in their 40s. They said, I saw Superman, my hero, come out, and I found the strength to do that too. And man, why bother talking to somebody about the negative when you've got that much positive happening?
Yeah, so many people want negativity. Like one criticism that we've had from people, both regarding the podcast and just our social media in general, is people saying, well, you guys love everything. Like, well, no, we don't love everything. It's that we choose to only spend time talking about the things that we love. Like, does the internet need more negativity? Do you need us going on and other podcasters and things going on talking about how they hated something that came out? Why do you want that?
No, it's incredibly boring.
Yeah.
And it's not something I partake in. Like, anytime I watch something that I don't enjoy, I just don't talk about it. Certainly not online. I might have a little complaint to, my family or my mates, out when we're having a drink, but there's no reason for me to put a single ounce of negativity onto the internet. There's enough of that there. Whereas if there's something I love, I'll sing it from the rooftops. I'll just say, everybody, take a look at this, And if there's something particularly that doesn't have enough eyeballs on it that I think is really, really deserves it, or a great creator or somebody with a fantastic voice coming up, I'll always try to promote them, because what's the point of tearing people down who are trying to entertain?
Yeah, and why do you want to spend your energy on negativity? Like, just last night and this morning, already seeing all over the place people losing their minds about last night's episode of The Last of Us. Which those of us who played the games knew what was coming, but those people who want the negativity already going out and just spreading negativity.
Yeah, well, I saw. I've gone through some of what Laura Bailey went through at that point in time, and I've known Laura for a number of years. So,
that's awesome.
People who, it is ridiculous that people can't separate fiction from reality. That you would think to attack an actor or a writer or an artist over something that happens in fiction is absurd. Yeah. Bad things have to happen in fiction. That's just the case. Bad things have to happen to characters you love. Otherwise, it's not, they can't grow. They can't, then you don't get a wonderful moment of hope afterwards. There needs to be downfalls. There needs to be bad bits so that the good bits feel better. I think there are a lot of people that present on the internet that wish Bilbo Baggins had just never left his comfortable hobbit hole. It's just like, what are you doing, man? Out there's like dragons. Just stay home. Eat fruit. Bake things. Yeah, it's adventure things. There are things that happen, and they have to be negative, and they have to be bad, and your character has to be challenged. And there are a lot of people who don't understand that there are low points in stories so that the high points are better. And
if Bilbo doesn't leave the Shire with Gandalf and the dwarves there, that doesn't set into motion the events that eventually save the world.
Exactly.
And and it's a journey.
Yeah, but I'm very glad that you don't concentrate on the negative. That's very appreciated. And we obviously every so often we see some of those reviews, and we see the people who are just week in, week out, just want to tear things down, and just like, oh, why bother, man? Do you even like comic books? Do you even like superheroes? You're just here to one star this thing again, or and explain why it's bad. It's like, okay, cool. What a great way to spend your day every day.
And
the other thing is, man, if I don't like a comic book, I just don't read it. Like, I get 3 or 4 pages and go, oh, well, yeah, not for me, but also possibly for other people. So I'm not going to complain about it.
Yeah, I don't know. And you can argue that even if something is in an industry like comics, that, depending who you ask, the comic industry has always been dying, since 1930s, that someone will always say the industry is dying. So it could be argued that all press is good press to a degree. But one of the things that you've contributed very positively to, as we were just talking about, is representation in comics when it comes to like gay relationships, like John Kent and Jay Nakamura, introducing Nia Nal, Dreamer, into the main continuity. And it's great steps towards normalizing the presence of these issues in comic book stories. Do you think that with enough time we could reach a point where there are no longer headlines when a comic character is revealed to be anything other than a straight cisgendered being? And do you even think that's something important to happen, like where the focus can be about the stories rather than these scandalizing headlines and the pearl clutching of, oh my lord, Tom Taylor made Superman into one of them gays?
Yeah, look, obviously that's what we want. We don't want, we just want the world of comic books to look like the world, to reflect the world we live in. We want everybody that exists in the world to also exist in media. It's a really simple thing. Obviously, there are people in this world who don't like that and feel threatened by anything that doesn't look exactly like them, or love exactly like they do, or who weren't born exactly the way they were. And that's tragic and sad, but, we'll keep doing what we're doing. We'll just keep telling cool stories with good people who want to help. And, they'll love who they love, and they'll be born how they were born, and they will be who they'll be.
That should be the mantra of the world, I think.
Yeah.
That right.
In a nice world it is. And the thing is, you were talking about negativity before, and I do think if you're a Superman fan, if you're a Batman fan, if you're a Wonder Woman fan, if you're a Spider-Man fan, if you're an X-Men fan, if you're a Captain America fan, you shouldn't have room in your day to complain and to look for the flaws in things and to concentrate on negativity. Elevate things. Don't always look to tear things down. There's enough wrong with this world, enough things going ways we wish they weren't, that you can focus on without looking to tear down pieces of entertainment that are just there to try to give us, bring a smile or raise an issue or help in some way. That's all it comes down to.
Yeah, just allow yourself to be happy about some things. Come on.
100%. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer here. It's I know it's getting late your time. I know you're a night owl like me, but
10 to 1 in the morning, it's fine. I do have some
up there all night.
I literally have to, when I hop off this, I am literally writing Detective Comics, so that's my job for the next 2 hours tonight.
Well, that's perfect. Before we wrap right up, then I'll reiterate that Mercy of the Father in hardcover and trade paperback is coming July 1st. Cool. Issue 1097, the first issue of the second arc, is May 1st. Is there anything that you would tell people of, what to expect in this next arc, why they should stick with it for the ride?
Oh, it's hard to explain. I will say Harvey Bullock and Batman together are fantastic. There's a third character that I can't talk about, but we do have a really nice little trilogy thing. I've seen an early solicitation. Yeah. And there's a great dynamic there, and Lee Garbutt's just nailed it. And then I will say what's coming up in 1100 is it 1100? Is that what? Yeah, Mikel Janin is going to tell a story there. In particular, his art's going to be all integral, and it's the sort of one that I think, hopefully he'll get nominated for an Eisner for. I think it's really, really special. And I can't tell you how excited I am for 1101 onwards. We're telling a big, big story straight after that. I know this all sounds very vague and gee wow, but it's true. We've only just sort of signed off on this pitch for 1101, and it's a really cool. It's a proper big Batman story. At a time when he gets a new costume and all the rest of it that's happening at the same time. Yep.
Oh, very cool. I'm going to have to start bugging them for a PDF of 1100 as soon as possible.
100%. Yeah, it's a big one. Mikel's excited. I'm excited.
Okay, two quick things I want to ask just before we wrap up. First thing, I like asking creators this. If you had a magic wand and you could just wave that wand and fix one thing in the comic book industry, just with a wave of that wand, it would fix it for everyone across the industry. What would that thing be that you would want to fix?
I would just want more people in comic stores. I want people heading into your local comic shop and talking to people and not just doing everything online, but going in and interacting with people like yourself, like great comic book people who work in comic book shops who love what you love, and are passionate about what you're passionate about and know great stories. More than anything, that's, I'd love more comic shops, more people in shops, less negativity.
And for anyone who hasn't been...
Sorry, I waved the one twice. Yeah, I waved the one twice.
Hey,
sorry.
I'll allow it. For anyone who hasn't been getting into comic shops, there is, as it happens, a great time for that coming up. Free Comic Book Day is coming up. It's every year, the first Saturday of May. There are free comics in all the comic shops. So even if you just want to go out and pick up some free ones, you'll see some other cool stuff that you'll like too. So go and check out your comic shops there.
Absolutely. And that's the same in Australia, and it's the same in America. They're everywhere. And make sure when you're doing to go into your comic shop that you get all the free comics you can, but also pick up, buy something else. Anything you see that you like, just grab it. Yep.
Yeah, help out the shop. If the number of people that come through each comic shop on Free Comic Book Day, if every person spent $2 in the shop, that would change the comic shop's month.
Absolutely.
And one last thing, just for some insights from you, is there anything that you would suggest, just entertainment wise, something that people should watch or read, whatever? What would you tell people to check out if they haven't? What are you watching or reading? Or
what am I watching or reading? I've just started watching The Studio on Apple.
I love that.
Very good. The second episode, The Oneer, is just a phenomenal piece of television. I like clever things. We there's a reason we did our Nightwing POV issue and our Nightwing No Panels issue, and the Studio episode 2 is a lot like that. And Bruno Redondo and I have actually messaged each other about that episode. So yeah, I would certainly recommend that. My family and I are actually watching Ted Lasso again. We're just about to watch the third season again because we love wholesome stuff. And my youngest son in particular asked for that again. So that's what we're rewatching at the moment.
Just such a feel-good show.
It's so great. I think the fact that and Nightwing sort of appeared at the same time wasn't a coincidence. I think that's kind of what we needed.
Synergy.
I think that's, I don't know. I'm reading lots of things. I'm reading so many books. This is the problem. So many comics. I can't recommend them all. I don't know where to start. There's all the ones you all know about, but basically, read anything by Kelly Thompson. Read anything by Mark Waid. Read anything by Scott Snyder right now. Tom King right now. And oh man, there's too much good stuff. Jason Aaron's crushing it.
His Absolute Superman.
Yeah.
They
just, the Absolute line, everybody knows how great they are. They're just phenomenal. Look, it's an exciting time. Just read more comics, people.
Yeah. And speak positively about the ones you like. Don't just go complain about something you didn't like.
If you don't like something, it's okay. You can just put it down. pick
Yeah.
up something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't need to be the squeaky wheel every time.
Nope.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much, Tom. I've wanted to do this for years. I really appreciate you taking the time to finally do this. And now you will, at least for let's say 6 months, you'll be free of me pestering you.
Sure thing. No, happy to come back, man. We've done this once. We've broken through the barrier. I can
Yes.
be there for you again. I promise.
I appreciate it, and I look forward to it. And I look forward to Detective Comics 1097 on May 1st. Everyone get out there and check it out. This was Bat Force Radio, and that was Tom Taylor. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.